Today, I will serve as the moderator for this powerful panel discussion with some really powerful people. It's called Roe-vember 2.0, How to Win Our Feminist Future at the Ballot Box. So, as I said, I'm joined with some really amazing folks who are mobilizing millennials, Gen Z, and women from across the donor community to continue fighting for gender equity on the ballot. We all know this year is a really serious year. It's a powerful moment for us to take back and continue to push for a feminist future in this country. So, are you ready to meet the panelists? Yeah, thank you. So much love. The more love, the better. So first, I'm going to start us off by introducing Sarah Guillermo, the CEO of Ignite. Sarah brings over 15 years of experience helping young women break into America's political landscape to become leaders within their communities and beyond. So please, shout out to Sarah. Woo!
Thank you.
Next, I'm here to introduce Taylor Saldich. Taylor is the executive director of the Supermajority, an organization driven by a single-minded purpose to strengthen the political power of women. Doesn't that sound great? Then we have Jason Fong, who is just 17 years old, right? And has been an integral part of the District 7 Youth Council since his freshman year of high school. So yeah, shout out to you, Jason. And last but not least, let me introduce Stacey Mason, the co-founder and executive director of Women Count and Electing Women Bay Area. And she plays a very lead role in the National Electing Women's Alliance. So shout out to them as well. I'm so honored to have you all on this panel and to be sitting up here with you. And I'm so excited to be here with y'all today. I'm going to start us off with just kind of a grounding question to get the juices flowing. This is a make or break election. We all know that. We're all feeling it. What are some of the winning strategies from previous cycles that can help initiatives and states and candidates as we're moving into this new year and this election that can create impact? And I'll start with you, Sarah.
I think one of the core winning strategies that we discovered at Ignite is really thinking about what your digital strategy looks like, specifically for a Gen Z audience that is our target audience, is really thinking about they are digitally native. What are the things that they need to see, feel, and hear literally on their cell phone? And so I think really creating what that campaign looks like from a messaging standpoint, from how many times you text them, what specific social platforms you're on, and how do you just make all of that happen in any election cycle. And that's what we're gearing up to do for this one. We just did a round of focus groups to help us understand, because there are so many different issues that are impacting Gen Z, and that we all saw in my slide earlier today. So I think one of the core things that we're really thinking about is what are these messages that they need to hear so that they make their ways to the ballot box, but also as informed voters, and then can mobilize their communities to get there as well.
Oh, that's so real, and we all know everybody's on their phone, so it's also helpful for adults along with the Gen Zer folks, as we're still learning how Instagram works, for me anyway. How about for you, Taylor? What are some things that come up for you?
I think the themes for me, there are two things, and you're going to hear me say this a lot for this panel. One is organizing around values is so powerful, especially when we're mobilizing young women. And the second thing is relationship building. Real conversations, one-to-one, between an organizer and a potential voter that listens. The goal is to listen. And so it's so important to not be didactic or pedantic or judgmental when you're talking, especially to young women, about participating in elections. You want to hear what they're concerned about, validate those concerns, empathize with those concerns. And so if you lead with values and you build real relationships, you can win elections. It's actually not rocket science. It's just something that isn't done as much as you think it should be done because it seems really fucking logical. Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't. I'm a potty mouth. I will try not to swear.
Never apologize. It's okay. We're on it now. We are all friends here. So, we're just having drinks among friends. Awesome. So yeah, getting back to our roots, that relationship building, and really just hearing people where they're at. How about for you, Jason?
Yeah, for me personally, I think it's all about increasing voter turnout across the board. A lot of young people are actually not as civically engaged as they should be, and voting really is a privilege. So it's really important that we are making sure that marginalized communities, young people, people of color are getting out to the ballot boxes and casting their vote so that their voices are heard as much as everyone else's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's super important. Want to just give you some hands up for that. How about you on your side?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So I have only one answer to this question, which is elect more women.
Yes.
3 words. We're reaching almost crisis-level proportions in the United States at the moment, despite what you may be hearing in the media and from the male-dominated party committees around the country. The numbers for women are actually stagnating, and they have been for several cycles in a row. The United States is now 71st in the world in the percentage of women in elected office. And we know from research, our organizations focus a lot lately on research. We have data now. Countries and states in the United States that are run by women have better outcomes across the board. Countries with more women in leadership have stronger economies, better healthcare systems, and less war.
Yes.
So there are ways we can all get involved in helping to elect more women. In California, at the federal level, we're going backwards. We're going to decline in the number of women in our federal delegation. The good news is, in the state legislature and the state senate, we're increasing our numbers significantly, which is amazing. Great work has been done. But there are things we can do here in California to impact this nationally, to spread the word that we simply need to elect more women.
Woo! So speaking of electing more women, so for you, Sarah, what is some information related to the difference it makes when Ignite women are activated with regard to turnout? Why is it important, and what are these strategies?
Yeah, it's really interesting. 97% of Ignite participants and alum that are eligible to vote have voted in every single election cycle that they're eligible to vote in.
Woo.
97%. And when you're thinking about the fact that we have been able to touch 40,000 young people all across the country with that 97%, that is huge. That is changing elections in the most local level. One of our alums, Carla Garcia, she's based in Dallas, Texas. And when I met Carla, she was 14 years old, like Alondra. I guess I met you at 17, so a little later. But 14, and she had a policy project during our high school program, and she wanted to figure out why we're 16-year-olds getting pregnant all the time. And her solution was like, we need to talk about options and things within the school district. So she had, through our policy program, she went to her school district and like proposed an abstinence or just an understanding and learning of what peer health education was gonna look like. And the school board was like, that's really cute, thanks for coming. She went to college, came back, ran for school board. She won her runoff, won her election, and she served at the very beginning of the pandemic. And so she actually had to figure out what was it gonna be like to take students out of school and then put them back in school. And she won by a margin of, I kid you not, like 128 votes.
Whoa.
And then she ran for re-election, what year are we in, 24 and 23 last year, and she lost by only 60.
Wow.
And so to kind of think about what that number looks like, and when people are like, well, my vote doesn't matter or this doesn't matter, I know all of us understand that deeply in this room, but there are communities across America that do not understand that quite yet. And so I think that that's one of the big pieces and the levers. And so a lot of what Carla did is everything that we talked about already is like, how does she connect with her community? How does she get them to register? How did she get them to the polls? And I think each of those different different levers that are all related to how she communicated with her community. Did she do big, large election events? No. She did things at the panaderia where she had breakfast and coffee available for like weeks. They did all sorts of different things, and she was on the school campuses through DISD like every single day to be able to get that election out. And so I think those are kind of the different things that we're thinking about that are both at the most local level in our communities, but we're able to do across the country as well.
Thank you. And as you know, can you talk a little bit about abortion being a driving factor and what is going to bring Gen Z women to the polls?
Well, abortion is going to bring Gen Z women to the polls. I think we saw that a lot in 22, and I think, you know, given where we are across the country right now and what just happened in Arizona last week, I think it was just last week. Yes, I was in Arizona last night. But just thinking about what that looks like, I was with one of our students who started our chapter at U of A 2 days ago, and she was like, I never knew this was actually going to be a ripple effect in the way that it is. And she's like, I didn't realize that what my grandmother had to fight for is exactly what I have to fight for today. And so I think that they know, we all know. I don't think it's a connect the dot moment for us in that way. And so I think that's going to be a driving force for Gen Z young women, but for all women, frankly. And I think about, like, I have a 1-year-old, and so like, what is we've got to get this before she even understands what a period is, and get that going and really get it to the next phase. And so I think there's a lot to do. I think a lot of this messaging work to really connect the dots for folks is a really big piece, but a lot of it is to actually meet people where they're at.
Mm-hmm. And what does the turnout actually look like since Gen Z has actually been voting?
I know, I wish I had my fun graphic. So I shared earlier, Gen Zers are turning out 10 points higher than when we as millennials, my particular generation, turned out when we were at the 18 to 25 range. So just think about that. Their propensity to vote has been increasing, and so their turnout was in the 30% mark for the midterms, and so thinking about that is usually turning out to be 60 to 70 for the presidential election. And so we're really excited to see what that looks like. There are gender differences between that as well. Young women are voting 11 points higher than their male counterparts. And so there is, obviously, with our particular mission, that is our key demographic. And so just thinking about how do you maneuver one set of group of folks? And then you can find me later to tell you what young men are voting for and what's motivating them. That is different than probably what's motivating you, but just based on what we're seeing across the country.
Sweet, thank you so much. And you mentioned, you know, that abortion is what's bringing a lot of young women into to the polls right now. And given, you know, what happened with Dobbs, how's that really been a driving force for Gen Z young women, and how are they really talking about this as an issue?
I mean, they're out there. They're talking about it at the kitchen table. They're talking about it on stage. They're talking about it on social media. They're talking about it everywhere they're going. And so I think the driving force is a key component in terms of thinking about the front issue. And so I imagine that there is going to be continued more. The other thing that we know about this generation is that they are not a one-issue generation. You saw on the slide earlier that the percentages were not far from each other between mass shootings and abortion when you look at it for young women. And so that's another piece of the puzzle as well.
Thank you so much. That's super helpful. Taylor, can you talk to us about organizing and really what you mentioned earlier about voting around values and protest voting, and using kind of, you know, we all know the situation in Gaza has been a big issue and been a conversation for a lot of young folk. Like, how can we help our young folk to exercise their right and want to make a statement surrounding voting and about their values by voting with their values at the forefront?
Yeah, this is a good question. So we have done, at Supermajority Education Fund, we've done some research specifically on infrequent non-voting young women, 18 to 35, women of color, and white women. And the two reasons that young women, the two reasons that are relevant to this conversation that are interesting to talk about around why young women are not voting is, one, they feel like there are no candidates on the ballot that represent their values. So like what Ignite is doing to get and what Stacey's doing to get women on the ballot is huge for young women. To be able to vote for folks who reflect their values is really big. The second thing is that folks feel like their vote doesn't matter, right? So those are like the two main things that are preventing young women from engaging in elections. You mentioned Gaza, and I think this is really important because the protest vote movement, the vote uncommitted, the leave it blank movement, I think has given us this really wonderful gift to demonstrate how democracy can work when people participate and when people vote their values, right? So what we're seeing is a surge of young people participate in a presidential primary election that is not, there's not a lot of people on the ballot, right, for the presidential primary on one side, on either side, really, at this point. So what is cool is that these folks are showing up, they are voting their values, and we are seeing an administration hear what they're saying, which is really fucking cool. You know, like, we have this opportunity in this moment, in this microcosm, to demonstrate just how powerful voting actually is. And I think that is, like, it's kind of magical, you know? This is also what I think is so exciting about abortion as an issue, because there are so many things you can be doing very practically at your state and local level that are mobilizing young women to vote, right? We've seen the ballot initiatives from Kansas to Montana, most recently in Ohio. We have 2 ballot initiatives in Arizona and in Florida, and I know I'm missing another state, but those are the states that are on my mind right now. So forgive me for being incomplete. But what's really cool is when you have those ballot initiatives available, young women turn out and vote because they understand that by showing up and voting for that issue, they can impact their lives. That is what's so cool about ballot initiatives. And I don't live in the state of California, so I'm not as lucky as all of you who, like, I feel like you all have law degrees to vote in California with the amount of ballot initiatives you get to vote on, which is very exciting. In New York, we don't have as many. But in New York this year, we have an ERA ballot initiative, which is also going to be super exciting. And so in the state of Michigan, there is a state Supreme Court race up. So in Michigan in 2022, they passed the abortion ballot measure, which saw a surge of young women voting. The lines at, like, all of the universities were outrageous. You know, young women far outpaced previous generations of young women voters, particularly because of the Dobbs decision. And what's cool about that is now abortion is codified into the Constitution. Thank you, Big Gretch. Thank you, Dana Nessel and Jocelyn Benson, all the incredible women who are in executive positions in the state of Michigan. There's a reason why the state of Michigan looks so good for women right now. It's because it's being led by women.
Yes.
But there's a state Supreme Court race in Michigan this year, and that state Supreme Court race is so important because if the candidate doesn't win, the state Supreme Court has, they have to uphold the Constitution, right? They are the body that decides if that constitutional amendment is respected and upheld. So all this is to say that voting your values is terribly important. When you have things on your ballot that reflect your values, it is very mobilizing. It empowers young women, and so it's important to have people on the ballot that represent values. It's important to have issues on the ballot that represent values. I think what's also super fascinating about the abortion ballot measures in particular is that we are seeing a coalition of women vote for this ballot measure. Perhaps not because all of them really love or want to protect abortion, but they want to protect their individual freedom. And freedom is a value. And that's what I mean when I say organizing around values is really important, because when you organize around values, it can supersede party identity. It can supersede the stuff that really bogs us down. a supermajority of people in this country believe in some basic values. Our elected officials do not represent that. So we can't lose sight of that, you know? We can't lose sight of the fact that there are actually a supermajority of us who have shared values, that if we go out and we vote those values, we have the power to win elections and to set the priorities for the people who we elect. And I think, you know, the last thing I'll say is that I think it's really important that we remember that our elected officials are not supposed to be perfect. They're supposed to listen. And voting is a really powerful tool to talk to our elected officials. And the current administration has prioritized things like student loan debt forgiveness, has prioritized closing gun loopholes to prevent domestic violence, and these are things that are happening because young women, young people are organizing. Our collective power is undeniable, and we have an administration currently that is willing to listen to what we have to say. We have to just keep talking to them.
Thank you so much. That is definitely deeply powerful and so true. Jason, I know, as a young person, can you share a little bit more about why is an initiative like Vote 16 important, and what are the successes and challenges, and what is the end goal of this initiative?
Yeah, so for those who don't know, Vote 16 is an initiative within San Francisco currently that is to lower the voting age and allow 16 and 17-year-olds to vote. And this is really important because it does two things here. It empowers young people, and it also provides representation to individuals who deserve to have a voice.
Yes.
16 and 17-year-olds are responsible enough to vote, and I'll tell you why. 16 and 17-year-olds are able to work an unlimited number of hours, and they are able to get taxed on every single cent that they earn.
Yes.
So this is essentially taxation without representation.
Yes.
Secondly, within California, 16 and 17-year-olds are able to be tried as adults.
Yep.
Thirdly, 16 and 17-year-olds are able to obtain a slew of licenses. To name a few, you can get a driver's license, you can get a boating license, you can get a motorcycling license, you can get a drone license, you can get a pilot's license, and you can also get a hunting license, just to name a few. So I think it's a little illogical that we feel that 16 and 17-year-olds are responsible enough, are mature enough to fly an airplane, to drive a boat, to go hunting, but they're not responsible enough to go out to our polls and cast their first vote. Secondly, to add to that, Vote 16 is really important because it's about increasing democratic representation, which is not only a fundamental principle of our government, but just democracy as a whole. Right now, our highest turnout rates are among white senior males, which is obviously not representative of the people. So it's really important that we are making sure we are providing the resources and the services to allow 16 and 17-year-olds to go out there and vote, so that we are creating habitual voters and creating impactful change that is representative of what the people truly want.
Wow. That's amazing. Dang. Thank you so much, Jason. And everybody keep a lookout for Vote 16, huh? Thank you so much.
I can also address some of these successes and failures.
Oh, yes, please.
A little bit more. So Vote 16 is not a new initiative, and it actually started in San Francisco back in 2016 with Prop F, and then it was on the ballot again in 2020 with Prop G. And we're trying to get it on the ballot again for this November, so look out for it. Back in 2016 with Prop F, we received unanimous support from the Board of Education, as well as several prominent elected officials, but unfortunately it did not pass that year. In 2020, we received unanimous support from the Board of Education, the Board of Supervisors, as well as support from Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, and that year we lost by 6,000 votes. So we were this close, but just not quite there yet, so hopefully this time around we'll be able to cross the finish line. And Vote 16 actually emerged from a city in Maryland called Tacoma Park. and it's currently in practice there. And there have been dozens of campaigns across the country to lower the voting age. And if San Francisco passes Vote 16 this November, we will be the first major city on the West Coast to allow 16 and 17-year-olds to vote. And I will say, the end goal for Vote 16, if I had to distill it down into a phrase, it would be to empower young people and to create habitual voters. Voting is a habit, and the data is very clear that once an individual casts their first vote, they are more likely to return to the polls in the future. And the earlier that individual casts that first vote, the more likely they are to become habitual, lifelong voters. So as we enter this new era where a lot of major decisions are going to be made at our ballot boxes, it's really essential that we are leveraging the passion of young people who want to be civically engaged to make sure we are creating a next generation of voters who are habitual and who are creating impactful change that is representative of what everyone wants.
That's amazing. Awesome. Thank you so much, Jason. That's, again, just such a powerful initiative, and it's so exciting to be able to actually hear like what it can do for the future for voting in this country and for young people's civic engagement long term. So thank you again. And Stacey, as you know, money is the mother's milk of politics. And you know that all too well, and that's why you created an organization to help elect more pro-choice women. How do women candidates get funded? And what is the unique challenges that women candidates face when it comes to funding?
Thank you for that. So our work is focused on encouraging women to think differently about political giving and about becoming political donors. And I want to preface everything I'm about to say with the fact that our campaign finance system is terrible. It is broken. I start every event, everything by saying, I can't wait till we're put out of business, because it is a terrible system. It needs massive reform and massive overhaul. It's not going to happen until we elect different leadership who can undo things like Citizens United and all kinds of other campaign finance bad practices. However, this is the system we have. It's the one we're working with, and we have to be competitive with the other side. So to that end, what we know about women candidates and how they're funded is that all women candidates across the board are disproportionately underfunded compared to their male counterparts.
100%.
Women of color candidates disproportionately underfunded compared to white women candidates. All women candidates, regardless of color, regardless of office, regardless of age, any demographic, rely more heavily on women donors. However, women make up only 38% of all donors. It's not enough. So they're, again, rely on a lot of research. Women make 85% of consumer purchasing decisions in the United States. That doesn't mean they hold the wealth, but they make the 85% of decisions about what to purchase. So why is it that women are willing to step up, use their voices on what furniture, clothing, groceries, and cars to buy, but women are not stepping up to make decisions about who we support for office and who we elect to office in the very moment where these leaders are making decisions about our bodies? So this is how we connect it all to Roe and to Dobbs. We are ceding this power, this decision-making to men by not using our voices at every step of the process. We have to use our voices in voting. We have to step up to run for office. But we also can be powerful and use voices as political donors at all levels of giving, from the $5 level to the $1,000 level to the $5,000 level. And the women candidates rely on it more and more and more in order to win their races. We just got in the first quarter financials at the federal level, and at the national level, there are the four most vulnerable members of the Senate. Because as you all know, we have to hold on to the Senate this cycle, incredibly important. 2 men and 2 women in the 4 vulnerable states, which are Nevada, Wisconsin, Ohio, and Montana. 2 men and 2 women. The men outraised the women 3 to 1. 3 to 1. I mean, that's a huge, huge margin. And so we just really think it's important for women to consider the ways in which they can participate in political giving. And again, it's a way to use a voice. And there are all kinds of tools and opportunities online to educate yourself about who the women are who are running for office. And we also, our organizations talk a lot about what we call informed intentional giving as part of community. I encourage people to really educate themselves, learn about the candidates. There are so many competitive races out there, and give in a way that speaks to you. So, look for the women of color who are in competitive races, LGBTQ women who are in competitive races. It may be a state that you particularly care about because it's where you're from and it's where you grew up. But there are strategies for learning about where these women are and how they need the funding and how to help, at any given level. And it's so incredibly important also to support women at the pipeline level because, we know from also that women move up the pipeline. So if we're not supporting women at the school board and city council and mayoral level, then it's hard to complain later when we don't have women to recruit to run for House seats and Senate seats or
100%.
governor or even higher. So.
Lovely. Thank you so much. So I know we're a little over time. I'm gonna do this last question quick until somebody comes out and tells me I gotta move. Yeah, when they turn the music on. Oh gosh, it's the Oscars. So for all of y'all, what are 2 things, like your top 2 things, that people can do when we leave this summit and to become more civically active, and as it's the lead up to this election, but even beyond this election, after? I'll start with you, Sarah.
Yeah, I think take one of these young people to the ballot box with you if they're not eligible to vote yet, because we are going to get it passed, but we're not there yet. But bring a young person to the ballot box with you. Bring them to every candidate forum you're going to go to. Have them help you read that book and start to figure out who you're voting for, and just start to understand that, because I think the conversations at the earliest stage is going to help. Even if they can't really understand you yet, my daughter will just play with me with it. But I think that's going to be a key piece to start to build the momentum there. And then I think the other component is get out there, figure out what is going to inspire you from our time together today, whether it's registering more voters or it's just getting to the polls yourself, or doing more. There's a lot of different ways to do more from our time together today.
I'll keep this brief. Join Supermajority. Go to supermajority.com, sign up. We will train you in how to have values-based conversations with voters in key states that can have a disproportionate impact on the election this year. The other thing that's really important about that is it's about joining a community. The work is not always easy. We lose more than we win sometimes. And having a community and people to do it with is actually the most important thing. So whether it's Supermajority or with an organization that's more local to you, finding your people is really, really, really important.
Yeah, for me, I would say support Ignite SF and also support the Youth Commission. As we are gearing up for ballot season, there are going to be a lot of opportunities to get engaged with the Youth Commission and the Vote 16 initiative. So I think it's really important that we're coming together to make sure it gets passed this last time.
Sweet.
I would say spread the word, use your power, tell your friends. Taylor said earlier that this is all about relationship-based. Politics only goes so far.
Yeah.
When we're all so tired of all the emails and being flooded with all of the messaging. It's relationship-based. It's tell your friends. If you have friends in Maryland, call them, text them, tell them to go vote for Angela Alsobrooks, who's in a really tough primary between now and May 14th. Early voting has started. and educate yourselves about opportunities for political giving. There's a lot of content on womencount.org, but all over you can learn more. But again, spread the word.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, everyone on this panel. And you have 8 possible ways of getting involved, so go out there and actually do it. And thank you so much for being such an active audience. I appreciate it.